In 1976, several Circleville, Ohio residents began receiving strange letters detailing personal information about their lives. Bus driver Mary Gillespie was accused of a supposedly non-existent affair with the superintendent of schools. The writer told Mary that he or she had been observing her house and knew she had children. It was postmarked Columbus, Ohio, but had no return address. Within 8 days, Mary received a similar letter. She kept the letters to herself until her husband, Ron, received one as well. The letter stated that if Ron did not stop his wife's affair, his life would be in danger. After 2 weeks, the writer threatened to go public with the affair allegations, broadcasting it on TVs, CB radios, and billboards. Mary and Ron only told 3 people about the letters: Ron's sister, her husband Paul Fresher, and Paul's sister. Mary had some ideas about who might be sending the letters. They decided to have Paul write letters to the suspect, claiming that they know who he or she was. The plan seemed to work. The letters stopped for several weeks. That changed on August 19th, 1977, however, when Ron received a phone call from the now alleged writer. The call seemed to confirm Ron's suspicions on the identity of the writer. He grabbed his gun and then left in his pickup truck, even though the writer claimed to be watching the truck. A few minutes later, Ron was found dead in his pickup truck, crashed into a tree. Investigators later learned that Ron had fired at least 1 shot from his gun before crashing. Sheriff Dwight Radcliffe questioned and eliminated at least 1 suspect in the case. He then ruled Ron's death an accident, claiming that he had lost control and crashed while driving drunk. However, several residents soon received letters stating that Sheriff Radcliffe had been involved in a cover-up. According to Paul, Sheriff Radcliffe initially agreed that the death was a result of foul play. However, he allegedly changed his mind when the suspect passed a polygraph test. Ron's blood alcohol level was 16, which was twice the legal limit. However, many of Ron's family and friends were surprised by this. They did not think that he was a heavy drinker. Mary and the superintendent later acknowledged a relationship, although they claimed that it had started after the letters were sent. In February of 1983, Mary was harassed along her bus route. The letter writer apparently began placing threatening signs next to the road. One day, Mary had enough and decided to go and rip the sign down. When she did, she discovered a booby trap designed to kill her. The trap had a box which contained a small pistol. If Mary had pulled the sign off a certain way, the gun would have fired. An amateurish attempt was made to rub off the serial number of the gun. When the lab tests were able to raise the number, it was determined that the gun had belonged to Paul Fresher, who had recently separated from Ron's sister. Paul, however, claimed that the gun had been stolen. On February 25, 1983, Sheriff Radcliffe asked Paul to meet with him and take a handwriting test. He asked Paul to try and copy the handwriting from the letters. Sheriff Radcliffe also had him write the letters while repeating them verbally. After the test, Paul took Sheriff Radcliffe to his garage and showed him where he kept his guns. Afterwards, the two returned to the courthouse where Paul was arrested and charged with attempted murder. On October 24, 1983, he went on trial for the attempted murder of Mary Gillespie. Although he was never charged with writing the threatening letters, they became a crucial part of the evidence against him. A handwriting expert testified that Paul was the letter writer. Mary also testified that she believed that he was the writer after his wife visited her with the same suspicion. Paul's boss also testified that he was not at work on the day that the booby trap was found. Paul had an alibi for most of the day. However, he never took the stand in his defense, proclaiming his innocence. He was convicted and was given a 7 to 24-year sentence. While there, he himself received letters from the writer, determined to keep him there. Others still received letters postmarked from Columbus, even though he was in prison in Lima. Even though he was in solitary confinement, letters kept arriving. In December 1990, Paul became eligible for parole. He was denied parole due to the letters, even though there was no way that he could be sending them. In May 1994, Paul was finally paroled. He continues to maintain his innocence. However, the author of the letters has never been revealed. Journalist Martin Yant has investigated the story and found another possible suspect that could be the writer. He also discovered that 20 minutes before Mary found the booby trap, another bus driver on Mary's route had seen a suspicious man standing next to a yellow El Camino. The man was at the same spot where the trap would later be found. Yant found that the possible suspect's brother owned the same type of car. The description does not match Paul, and he had a solid alibi at this specific time. On December 26, 1900, a small ship was making its way to the Flannan Islands in the remote Outer Hebrides. Its destination was the lighthouse at Ellen Moor, a remote island which, apart from its lighthouse keepers, was completely uninhabited. Although uninhabited, the island has always sparked people's interest. It is named after St. Flannan, a 6th century Irish bishop who later became a saint. He built a chapel on the island, and for centuries shepherds used to bring over sheep to the island to graze, but would never stay the night, fearful of the spirits believed to haunt that remote spot. Captain James Harvey was in charge of the ship, which was also carrying Joseph Moore, a replacement lighthouse keeper. As the ship reached the landing platform, Captain Harvey was surprised not to see anyone waiting for their arrival. He blew his horn and sent up a warning flare to attract attention. There was no response. Joseph Moore then rowed ashore and ascended up the steep set of stairs that led to the lighthouse. According to reports from Moore himself, the replacement lighthouse keeper suffered an overwhelming sense of foreboding on his long walk up to the top of the cliff. Once at the lighthouse, Moore noticed something was immediately wrong. The door to the lighthouse was unlocked, and in the entrance hall, 2 of the 3 oilskin coats were missing. Moore continued on to the kitchen area, where he found half-eaten food and an overturned chair, almost as if someone had jumped from their seat in a hurry. To add to his peculiar scene, the kitchen clock had also stopped. Moore continued to search the rest of the lighthouse, but found no sign of the lighthouse keepers. He ran back to the ship to inform Captain Harvey, who subsequently ordered a search of the islands for the missing men. No one was found. Harvey quickly sent back a telegram to the mainland, which in turn was forwarded to the Northern Lighthouse Board headquarters in Edinburgh. The telegraph read, "A dreadful accident has happened at Flannan's. The 3 housekeepers, Ducat, Marshall, and the Occasional, have disappeared from the island. On our arrival there this afternoon, no sign of life was to be seen on the island. Fired a rocket, but, as no response was made, managed to land Moore, who went up to the station but found no keepers there. The clocks were stopped, and other signs indicated that the accident must have happened about a week ago. Poor fellows, they must have been blown over the cliffs or drowned trying to secure a crane or something like that. Night coming on. We could not wait to make something as to their fate. I have left Moore, MacDonald and Boymaster and 2 seamen on the island to keep the light burning until you make other arrangements. Will not return to Oban until I hear from you. I have repeated this wire to Muirhead in case you are not at home. I will remain at the telegraph office tonight until it closes, if you wish to wire me. A few days later, Robert Muirhead, the board superintendent, who both recruited and knew all 3 men personally, departed for the island to investigate the disappearances. His investigation of the lighthouse found nothing over and above what Moore had already reported, that is, except the lighthouse log. Muirhead immediately noticed that the last few days of entries were unusual. On the 12th of December, Thomas Marshall, the second assistant, wrote of severe winds the likes of which I have never seen before in 20 years. He also noticed that James Ducat, the principal keeper, had been very quiet, and that the third assistant, William MacArthur, had been crying. What is strange about the final remark is that William MacArthur was a seasoned mariner and was known on the Scottish mainland as a tough brawler. Why would he be crying about a storm? Log entries on the 13th of December stated that the storm was still raging and that all 3 men had been praying. But why would 3 experienced lighthouse keepers, safely situated on a brand new lighthouse that was 150 feet above sea level, be praying for a storm to stop? They should have been perfectly safe. Even more peculiar is that there were no reported storms in the area on the 12th, the 13th, and 14th of December. In fact, the weather was calm, and the storms that were to batter the island didn't hit until December 17th. The final log entry was made on the 15th of December. It simply read, "Storm ended, sea calm, God is over all." What was meant by God is over all? After reading the logs, Muirhead's attention turned to the remaining oilskin coat that had been left in the entrance hall. Why in the bitter cold winter had one of the lighthouse keepers ventured out without his coat? Furthermore, why had all 3 lighthouse staff left their post at the same time, when rules and regulations strictly prohibited it? Further clues were found down by the landing platform. Here Muirhead noticed ropes strewn all over the rocks, ropes which were usually held in a brown crate 70 feet above the platform on a supply crane. Perhaps the crate had been dislodged and knocked down, and the lighthouse keepers were attempting to retrieve them when an unexpected wave came and washed them out to sea. This was the first and most likely theory, and as such Muirhead included it in his official report to the Northern Lighthouse Board. But this explanation left some people in the Northern Lighthouse Board unconvinced. For one, why had none of the bodies been washed ashore? Why had one of the men left the lighthouse without taking his coat? Especially since this was December in the Outer Hebrides. Why had 3 experienced lighthouse keepers been taken unaware by a wave? Although these were all good questions, the most pertinent and persistent question was around the weather conditions at the time. The seas should have been calm. They were sure of this as the lighthouse could be seen from the nearby Isle of Lewis, and any bad weather would have obscured it from view. Over the following decades, subsequent lighthouse keepers at Ellen Moor have reported strange voices in the wind, calling out the names of the 3 dead men. Theories about their disappearance have ranged from foreign invaders capturing the men all the way through to alien abductions. Whatever the reason for the disappearance, something, or someone, snatched those 3 men from the rock of Ellen Moor on that winter's day over 100 years ago. Antony and Cleopatra's doomed love affair has captivated the world for centuries. The Roman general, bested by grief and shame following his final defeat during the Battle of Alexandria at the hands of his foe Octavian, turned his sword on himself upon hearing the false news that Cleopatra had died. However, his lover still lived. She had merely hidden herself in her tomb following Octavian's victory. Antony was transported to the mausoleum, where he finally succumbed to his wounds in the embrace of his queen. Rather than fall under Roman domination, Cleopatra, surrounded by sumptuous pearls, gold, silver, and countless Egyptian treasures, killed herself on the 12th of August, 30 BC, possibly by the bite of a cobra or an asp, a powerful emblem of pharaonic divinity. She was 39 years old. Cleopatra's corpse was mummified and, on Octavia's orders, interred beside Antony. Some 16 centuries later, Shakespeare wrote in Antony and Cleopatra, "No grave upon the earth shall clip it in a pair so famous." The location of Cleopatra's tomb has remained an enigma for hundreds of years. If it was as grand as the Roman reports would have it, the tomb should have left its mark on the archaeology of Alexandria, Cleopatra's great capital city, but no trace has ever been found. Alexandria and its environs have typically attracted less attention than the more ancient sites strung along the Nile, and the city itself has become increasingly difficult to excavate. Today, most of ancient Alexandria is submerged under approximately 20 feet of water. However, in 2006, it seemed a breakthrough had occurred. Zahi Hawass, then Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, announced that Cleopatra's tomb had been located at a ruined temple dedicated to Osiris, the deity of death and resurrection. Although confusingly, Hawass would later deny ever making the announcement, archaeologist Kathleen Martinez received permission to dig at the ancient temple, yet after a decade of excavation and hundreds of minor finds, including pottery and even skeletal remains, the temple has not yielded a secret tomb. Martinez remains convinced, however, that Cleopatra's body is there. If, and that's a big if, Cleopatra's tomb is discovered, then the archaeological world will shake. The find would even outshine that of Tutankhamun's remains. But there's a fly in the ointment, and that's that when archaeologists pin their hopes of discovery to fleeting textual references, in Cleopatra's case, those created by hostile Roman historians, the results are inevitably disappointing. Agatha Christie is the best-selling mystery writer of all time, with over 2 billion books sold. However, at age 36, Agatha suddenly disappeared, only to become the central character in a real crime investigation. On the morning of December 4th, 1926, in Newlands Corner, England, Agatha Christie's car was found abandoned about a half-hour's drive from her home. It appeared she had vanished into thin air. Some suspected the worst, that her husband Archie had done her in. The story caused a sensation. How could one of the best-known women in England simply disappear? She was born Agatha Miller in 1890 and raised in the wealthy upper-middle class of English society. When Agatha was 24, she married Colonel Archibald Christie, a handsome pilot in the Royal Flying Corps. Though many opposed the marriage, Archie and Agatha married on Christmas Day of 1914. Archie was immediately sent off to war. While Archie was fighting in France, Agatha launched her writing career, creating the famous Belgian detective Hercule Poirot. Each book Christie wrote had slightly better success than the one before, until her fifth one, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It was her first big hit. In 1926, 12 years into their marriage, Agatha, Archie and their young daughter Rosalind moved into a mansion. They called it Styles, after Agatha's first novel. Archie was now a successful investment banker. Later in 1926, Agatha's mother Clara died. Agatha fell apart. She took Rosalind to the home where she had grown up to sort through her mother's things. Though the move was temporary, it dragged on, and Archie stayed away. Meanwhile, Agatha fell into a deeper depression. When Archie did finally come to visit, he brought bad news. Archie had become involved with a woman named Nancy Neal, and he wanted a divorce. In a last-ditch effort to save her marriage, Agatha took Rosalind and moved back home. Then on December 3rd, 1926, Archie took off alone, saying he was going to a weekend house party, most likely a rendezvous with his mistress. According to different reports, either around 9:30 or 11 o'clock at night, Agatha left the house, visibly upset. The maids were alarmed when they saw her leave with a small travel bag and fur coat. Agatha left a note to her secretary and asked that all her weekend appointments be cancelled. Another note of unknown content was addressed to Archie. The next morning, Agatha's abandoned car was found just an hour's drive from Styles. It had simply gone off the side of the road. Archie Christie was tracked down at Archie's house party. He had the unfortunate timing to meet with authorities just as they were beginning to suspect foul play. The search for Agatha had begun. A nearby pool called Silent Pool, which Agatha had used in one of her previous stories, was dragged at least twice, and ordinary citizens joined the army in a ground search of the surrounding areas. Quickly, the press spun Christie's disappearance into a tale of murder, suicide, and infidelity. Gradually, eyewitnesses came forward to describe encounters they had with Agatha before she disappeared. The first was Ernest Cross, who was walking to work on the morning of Agatha's disappearance. Cross said Agatha seemed upset. She wore only a thin dress. Despite the cold weather, according to Cross, Agatha drove off into the opposite direction from Newlands Corner, the village where her car would later be found. 2 railroad porters also spoke with Agatha outside the station and thought that she had boarded the train. 11 days after Agatha Christie had been reported missing, she was seen at an elegant spa 200 miles from her home. She was registered under the last name Neal, the same name as Archie's mistress. The chief inspector wasted no time bringing Archie up to the spa. For reasons known only to herself, Agatha first identified Archie as her brother, not her husband. Soon after they were reunited, Archie and Agatha quickly left. They would never make a comment about Agatha's mysterious disappearance. The press concluded that Agatha had suffered from amnesia, but after that, Agatha and Archie soon went their separate ways. Agatha married archaeologist Max Mallowan in 1930, 2 years after Archie had wed Nancy Neal. By all accounts, both couples had long, happy marriages.